And I'd like to welcome you to our special Wednesday night time here that we are on YouTube together. As I said, we're probably going to quit calling it 30 at 7:30 because it's not always going to be 30 minutes and it's not always going to be live. I do want to encourage you tonight to make sure that you are communicating with one another in the chat room here on YouTube. I may or may not be in the chat room in a little bit because we had a board meeting prior to this today, and so consequently I found it necessary to have to record this. So if I happen to get done in time, then I'm going to try to get in there with you. But feel free to leave comments. I'll make sure that I am a little bit later taking a look at those particular comments that you have. I wanted to talk tonight about how to have peace. Right now, in the times that we are facing, because of the pandemic, because of everything that's going on, people are having a tough time with this issue of peace. In fact, there's anything but peace. As a matter of fact, people are wondering, how do I find any peace in the midst of this? How can you even have peace? How can you be peaceful? It's hard because there's so much coming at us. There's so many things that are going wrong. But we can't have peace. And I think it's interesting because the passage that we're going to look at for a few moments tonight is found in the book of Philippians, chapter 4. Paul is writing to the church at Philippi from prison. And what's interesting about this is he's probably tied to a Roman guard. The prison that he was in, not that prisons are great today, but they were really, really nasty. They were no cakewalk. It wasn't like what do they call it, Club Fed, where people go to for white collar crimes. These were nasty prisons. And so Paul had been in prison, of course unjustly, because for preaching the gospel and other things, but he didn't deserve to be there. So he found it necessary to be able to write to the churches. And one of the churches that he wrote to was the church of Philippi. And he was talking to them about how to be joyful. That's the theme. And here's a guy writing from prison on how to have joy. But he also wraps up this epistle by talking about peace, which is crazy. How do you talk about peace for everybody else when you're in prison? How do you talk about peace when you're in a pandemic? How do you talk about peace? And more importantly, how do you cultivate that inner sense of calm and peace when everything else seems to be falling apart around you? And it doesn't just need to be the pandemic. It could be a relationship falling apart, jobs falling apart, finances have fallen apart. It could be any number of things. You can fill in the blank what it is that is falling apart for you. And the question is, how do you have peace in the midst of that? Well, we find Paul pull back the curtain a little bit at the end of chapter 4, which is towards the end of the epistle. And in verse 8, he says, "And now, dear brothers and sisters," one final thing. So now he's doing this. He's saying, "Come here. I want to tell you, I got one more thing I want to tell you. One final thing that we have to talk about." It's interesting because he then says what that final thing is. And listen to his final thought, the final words in this. He says this: "Fix your thoughts." What? Fix your thoughts. Take your mind and focus it. Change your thinking. Watch what you think about. Watch what you put into your mind. Watch what you focus your mental energy on. Fix your thoughts. Get fixated with your thoughts. We're all fixated with our thoughts. We're all fixated on certain things. I don't know about you. Sometimes I got songs that are going around in my head or conversations that are occurring that I should have or something that I need to say. And I can find the self-talk going on all the time. We're always thinking. All of us are. And so what he's saying is take control of those thoughts and start to change what you're thinking about. And then he gives 6 things to think about. So he says, fix your thoughts, first of all, on what is true. I love the first thing he talks about is truth. Fix your mind on what's true. That means you have to take the time to decipher what's true and what isn't, and then focus yourself on truth, because there's a whole lot of people focused on falsehood. There's a whole lot of people that are focused on things that aren't true, and then they spread those things that are untrue. Winston Churchill is credited with saying that a lie gets halfway around the world before truth has an opportunity to even get his pants on. Whether Churchill said that or not is questionable, but you get the point. You and I both know that a falsehood, that a lie, can spread quicker than the truth. You know, it's interesting, as I am recording this, because it is in 2020, for those of you that are watching this much later, and we are in the middle of this pandemic, but we are also in an election year. And it's interesting because in 2016, the Russians were accused of meddling in our election. Now, they didn't meddle by changing our votes. The way they said they meddled is they put Russian bots on social media and hacked social media accounts and spread untruth. But what was interesting was somebody could try to spread untruth. You're responsible for whether you believe it to be the truth or not, and whether it is the truth. That means people spread stuff without investigating it. And he says, you and I have got to fix our minds on what is true. So find the truth and focus on truth. Doesn't matter what anybody else is saying. Doesn't matter about conspiracy theories. It doesn't matter whether somebody says, yeah, but I feel this way. What is the truth? And he says, fix your mind on what is true. And then he says, also, not only fix your mind on what is true, but also what is honorable. What is respectable and what is not respectable. Focus your mind on what is respectable. Focus your mind on things that are honorable. Watch what you think about. In other words, if you want to focus your thinking, that means you've got to read honorable things and watch honorable things and listen to honorable things. And things that are not honorable, we need to predominantly stay away from. We're always going to have to face and deal with some of those things, and we have to watch them or read them. But predominantly saying, don't fix your mind on the dishonorable. Fix your mind on the honorable. So he says, fix your thoughts, your mind on what is true, what is honorable, and what is right. Like, there's a right way and there's a wrong way. There's a right thing and there's a wrong thing. See, the problem is that I think we know often the difference between right and wrong. It's not as nuanced as we'd like to think it is. The problem is that doing right is difficult. And focusing on right is even more difficult. But he says, fix your thoughts, what is true, honorable, and right. Focus your mind on what's right, not on what's wrong. I think there's also a truth here about focusing on the good and not the bad, focusing on the positive and not the negative. Focus on what can go right and not what can go wrong. So often we focus our minds on things that could go wrong in a situation. Well, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this? The next thing you know, we're stressed out and in a downward spiral. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't prepare for the worst, but it's prepare for the worst and expect the best. Expect the right thing to happen. So he says, focus your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right. And then he says, focus your mind on what's pure. Ouch. There's so much out there that is impure words, impure actions, impure thoughts. And he says, flip it and make sure you're focusing on what's pure. That doesn't mean be a Puritan. It just means that you focus on the things that are not cloudy, that you can see through, that are transparent, that are pure. You talk about pure spring water, if you've ever seen it, pure mountain air that's uncontaminated, that's unpolluted. Focus on what's unpolluted. Focus on what is clear. Focus on what is pure. There's enough that's out there that you could focus on what's clear. The problem is when we try to focus on what isn't clear and then bring it into focus. It doesn't always work. So he says, fix your thoughts on what is true, honorable, right, pure. And then he says, and lovely. Some of you know I'm a fan of Ryan Holiday. Not a fan of everything he says and does, but some of his writings. And Ryan Holiday was, in his recent book on stillness, his most current book, he talked about, there was one of the people that he was researching talked about taking a forest bath. Now it sounds a little weird, but the idea is that go out to the woods, go out to the forest, and spend some time sitting and walking. In other words, taking in the beauty. There is a lot of psychological benefits to us being by the water, to us being in nature, to us sitting in front of a beautiful landscape. We're looking at things that are lovely, and we're focused on what's lovely. There's a lot of unlovely things going on in the world. There's a lot of murders and fires and bad police officers and bad protesters and there's all this bad going on. And if you keep focusing on that, you're going to get more stressed. And so he says, focus and fix your mind on what's lovely. And then he said on what's admirable. What is, again, respectable? What's respectable? What do you consider to be respectable? We've seen respectable people. We've seen others that treat people with respect. And he says, focus on what's honorable. Fix your mind there. Fix your thoughts. You fix your thoughts. Somebody else is responsible to fix your thoughts. You're responsible to fix your thoughts. What is true, honorable, right, pure, lovely, and admirable. And he says, think about things. In other words, he's paraphrasing now. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. What are people saying about? What would they say about it? Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. And then he says, keep putting into practice all that you have learned and received from me. He's telling the Philippians this now. Now he says this, everything I've heard and saw will be doing. Then he says this, then when you do all of that, the God of peace will be with you. The God of peace is going to be with you. It's not just you're going to be peaceful, but the God of peace, you're giving him a place in your mind and in your heart because you have fixed your thoughts of what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Change your thinking, change your life. That's it. You want peace in the midst of everything that's going on. Focus on peace. Focus on thinking about these things. You have control of what goes into your mind. This is why I think asking the right questions is important. It's where I think scripture memory is so important, because in a moment when you are stressed out and your thinking goes haywire and begins to spiral downward, if you have verses memorized like Isaiah 40:31, they that wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not grow faint. If you have passages like Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Sometimes I repeat that, and I with a different emphasis on each word. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can do all things. You get the point. You can keep repeating that. And what it's doing is it's not some kind of a mantra, it's not some kind of magic, but what it's doing is it's focusing your thinking at that moment. And you may be thinking to yourself, all right, well, what's the filter? What's the filter for me determining whether something is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable? Okay. Let me give you the ultimate test. Would you be willing to share what you're thinking about with what you're thinking about at that moment? Here's the test. With your grandmother or grandfather, with your mother or father, or with your spouse. Would you let them into those innermost thoughts, the things that you're thinking? It could be the beating yourself up. It could be things that you're thinking about another person. Would you be willing to say it to them? And if you go, man, no, I would be embarrassed. There's probably a good chance that it is not true or honorable or right or pure or lovely or admirable. Remember that if you don't have anything good to say, don't say it. If you don't have anything good to think about something that's good. It sounds reversed, doesn't it? But you are in control of your thoughts. And some of the things that are really important is not only memorizing scripture, but doing a brain dump every morning. I do a lot of that through journaling. Just sit there and write for 15 minutes all the garbage that's in my mind. Because if not, it flows around goes around rent free inside your head, and then it just explodes. The other thing too that is really important, so you have to get those thoughts out, memorizing scripture, but often the thoughts that we have that are not true, honorable, right, pure, lovely, or admirable have to do with people. We think about what we'd like to say to them. We think about how we like to get back at them. We think about how they wronged us. We think about all those things. A lot of times, the key to that is forgiveness. Forgiveness means to cease to hold resentment against an offender. There's probably somebody in your life, if you're finding yourself angry, you're thinking about things of how you can get back at them, or what you should have said to them, or why they did what they did, and why are they such a scoundrel, why are they such a jerk, or all those kinds of things. There's a good chance that you maybe have not forgiven that person. And so forgiveness is the first step. You say, how do you forgive? Well, you basically make the statement that you're forgiving them, not to them, but forgive them. Tell somebody, I just forgave so-and-so. You say, well, what if I don't feel it? Doesn't matter. It's a fact. Forgiveness is to cease to hold resentment against an offender. Worry about the feelings later. But being able to take the things that are in your head and get them out, and then replacing them with good stuff. There are other things that you can ask. I sometimes ask myself questions. You can even turn these into questions and say, what right now is true in my life? So if I were to wake up in the morning and say, what's true right now? What are some true things I can think about? Well, it's true that I love my family and my family loves me. It's true that I love my work. It's true that I live in a free country. It's true that, so you can do that. Then you can say, what are some honorable things that I can think about right now? Who are some honorable people that I can think about? Who are some honorable people that have gone before me? What are some honorable thoughts? Well, I can think about honorable people like Abraham Lincoln or Winston Churchill, or something. I can think about honorable people that I know today, honorable folks who that meant something to me in high school and in college, teachers and professors. What's right? What's the right thing? Well, the right thing is to, what are some right things that I can think about today? What are some pure things? What are some admirable things? What are some lovely things? I can look outside my window and see certain things. I can think about the lovely sky, or the lovely lake, or the lovely mountains, or the lovely trip. There's so many things that you can do, but as you start to ask yourself those questions, your brain looks for that, and you'll watch your thinking shift and change. But until you change this up here, you're not going to have any peace around here. Peace is something that is internal. Peace in the midst of storms and pressure and everything else. We've all seen people that have the ability to, in the middle of a major thing going on, that still seem to be centered and focused. And it's because they're focusing and thinking about what's true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. I can do that in the midst of a hurricane. I can do it in the midst of a pandemic. I can do it in the midst of other difficulties and challenges. Find what's true, honorable, right, pure, lovely, and admirable, and think about that. I'm so glad that you joined me tonight or today, whenever you're watching this. Make sure that if you have any questions or any comments, that you leave them below here in our YouTube chat, and I'll make sure that I get back to you. Meanwhile, if you have any questions that you'd like to send in that you maybe want me to address at some point in the future, send it to info@cbcfl.org. That's info at, and then Community Bible Church, the initial CBC, and then the abbreviation for Florida, info@cbcfl.org, and we'll make sure we seek to answer that question for you. Join us on all of our other social media channels. Don't forget also that Facebook Live every Tuesday morning Brew with Bob, and of course church every Sunday, in person 9:45 and 11, online at 11 o'clock. If you'd like the link to that, if you don't want to come out, just send us an email and we'll get that out to you. Thank you. I hope you all have a great day, great evening, wherever you are. God bless.